All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. If I would have pulled my mic over first, I wouldn't have had some awesome mic pops going on there. But yeah, I have some new settings for my stream health, or to aid in my stream health. So I'm hoping that will make the difference, so we can get rid of all that lag we had going on in the last time. I think my bitrate was just a little bit too low, if you guys are familiar with that. My upload speed is upwards of 10 megabits per second, which is pretty high, but I don't always get completely that. So I had it set on about 3500, so I just increased it a little bit, and then as well as increasing the, downscaling my resolution. So I'm hoping that will help with our lag issue that we had last time. But if anybody's experiencing any problems, let me know, and we can try to figure that out for the next stream to try and improve that. So we'll it's a work in progress. we'll get there eventually. I went ahead and worked on this guy a little bit more off a stream yesterday. I ended up kind of simplifying some of the armor, if you notice any of the changes. So we've simplified a couple things. I also worked on the helmet a little bit. If you want to check out the thumbnail from the last stream, you can see that we had some horns on the helmet. Instead, I decided to go with like a little asymmetrical crescent moon here for the centerpiece, and then some ears instead of some horns. I kept trying a bunch of different patterns for the horns, and I just really couldn't find anything that I liked. And he's a bear character, right? So I thought some ears on the helmet would be a little bit more interesting. And these are not his actual ears, right? These are going to be armored, so I'm going to add some like trim on them, I think, as well, and play with that a little bit more. Another thing I want to look at is his hammer and try to figure out what we want to do with this hammer. And then we can maybe think about some posing and stuff as well, but we're not quite there yet. For the hammer, I'm wondering if the demon face is a little bit not suitable for the character. He's an anthropomorphic bear. Is the hammer a little bit too gritty for the style that we're going for? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I could do a grizzly bear face, or a type of bear face on the hammer as well, or maybe try to make the demon face just more bear-like. It didn't take me a long time to work on this. It wasn't a long sculpt. It probably took like less than 30 minutes. So I wouldn't feel bad about trashing that and trying to move forward. There's a lot of other things, little things that we want to clean up as well. If you look at the legs, I kind of played around with those as well. I can hide some of this. So gave him a little bit of some hard surface creased pants. Maybe we can mess with these as well and try to stylize these a little bit more, as well as make them make a little bit more sense for actually looking like some baggy shorts. Currently they're just kind of bleeding into the legs, which doesn't really make much sense, but yeah, I think we can play with those. So let's go ahead and start with our ears on the helmet, and then we can kind of make our way around and start addressing all those things that I just mentioned, as well as any other things that we pick up on. How is it going, Hud Boy? Glad you could stop by and say hello for a little bit. It's always nice to see a friendly face. But yeah, so Bear Samurai Boy, let's do it. Let's take a look at what we got going on. Some of these pieces here should be hidden. So these are some extra pieces. Where was it? This one. This is actually a negative piece that I used with a live boolean, and I used it to create that subtraction there. I'm going to delete this because I already have this saved. and another subtool, and another tool, sorry, a Z tool, and I can reload that back in if I want to get that back. So no worries there. I'm going to take a look at these ears now. So I'm just going to duplicate and step on down here. So what I'm going to do for these ears, I want to get some trim on them, similar to the trim that we have on a lot of the other armor here. Let's look at these shoulder pads. These pauldrons. So you can see I have this bevel and extruded edge on here. We're going to try to do something similar. These ears, if I step all the way down, it's pretty much just a cube that I had originally with one edge loop around the middle that I pulled out, and I just modified this very slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step up one subdiv, delete lower, delete higher, and now I have that conforming to that shape a little bit better still, and I have a little bit more geo to work with. So looking at this, we're going to use our Z modeler brush and delete that edge loop, this one right here. And then we're going to bevel this edge. So this is pretty much how I did all the trim on the armor, sub like one piece for the shoulders. This trim down here, that's an actual tube of geometry here. So you can see when I not subdivide but turn off dynamic smooth, you can see how that lines up not very well, but with dynamic smooth it does line up perfectly. And maybe we can show how I did that again if people are interested. So let's go back on up here, and for this I think the bevel is going to work a little bit better than that last thing I just showed you. So let's start there. Let's start with a bevel, edge loop complete, pull that out, and then just an extrusion poly loop. And we want to pull that out. You can turn on dynamic smooth if you want to see what that's going to look like. But we are going to be creasing edges and making this a little bit thicker through here. Want this to be a little bit more uniform. And that'll help once we crease all those edges. Okay, so back to Z modeler there, and crease edge loop complete. So inner edge, and let's see what it looks like on the outer edge. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. So it makes it look a little bit more unorganic, which is what we want. We want it to look like it's a part of the armor, and of course coloring and material and everything else will help with that a lot as well. I'm just going to mask off part of this and use backface masking to try to thicken up our bevel. Make sure that symmetry's on. And that's looking pretty good. Alright. Turn off backface masking. The shape of this is, let me look back at my old ones. Yeah, so the shape of this has kind of rounded out a little bit more than what I wanted. So I think I'm going to try to modify that back to that shape. And let me see here. So I'm going to go about halfway, get that middle poly loop, and try to adjust that up. That poly loop is causing a little bit of problems for us, so if I click once, it's going to kind of, excuse me, it's going to spread that mask. It's going to kind of do a dithering effect through those other edge loops. Might be a little bit too strong, so let's mask out this final edge of poly loops just to make sure we're not selecting any of those, and then do a little bit of move and a little bit of stretching with the move tool. And I think that's a little bit too much. A little bit too much stretch. So just switch between dynamic, smooth, and just what your polygons look like as you're working like this. Just so you can kind of understand your surface flow, where the polys actually are. So if I turn on dynamic smooth and I try to grab that vertice, you can see that red dot there. That's actually where that vertice is. So I'm not actually able to, if I make this really small and try to grab that, it might snap to it, but oftentimes it'll be too far away that it won't. A good example of that is down here on the this piece. See the vert right there? If I try to grab it right around here, showing that orange dot, that's where the vertice actually is. This is not actually subdivided geometry. This is just dynamically smooth geometry. Kind of like hitting the 3 key in Maya, if you're familiar with that. Turning on kind of the dynamic smooth in there. So pretty much the same thing. I think in Maya it's called like just smoothing mode or something. It's been a while since I've looked at what it's called. I normally just hit the hotkey. Alright, so the ears are looking a little bit more catty than I want. I think it's just the length that's doing that. Let me mirror and weld here real quick. Okay, we're good. I think perspective was just kind of throwing me off. I had these tilted forward a little bit. I'm trying to just kind of play around with the angle of these as well, as I'm not super happy with it right now. Trying to get a more clean transition between the ear and the actual helmet. And I'm wondering if we can do some Q meshing on these polys here. And I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but ooh, we got a little bit of stretched vert down here. Really, really stretched. Let's try to fix that. Just using Q mesh or extrusion would work fine. I think we can use extrusion. Well, if we're going to use extrusion, we need to make sure that we have a single poly selected. Essentially what I did there, if you saw that, if you're using your ZModeler brush and you're holding Alt, you can kind of mask out the polygons that you would like to affect. So here I can perform an extrusion in and see what that looks like. Kind of flip between those two. It's a little hard with dynamic smooth, as if you undo or redo it, typically goes back to turning dynamic smooth on or off. So it can be a little frustrating to work with. Let's try, I think I'm fine with this, but I want to turn off some of the creasing in here. Not only that, but let's highlight all these faces, just like we just did, and try to scale them a little bit as well. So scale, a single poly is fine. Turn on local symmetry. Ooh, wow. I did not know that. So I don't think local symmetry at least works with ZModeler in general, or maybe it just doesn't work with scaling in general for that. So the way we can get around that would be to do it the old-fashioned way. So just mask out the faces that we want. Flip that mask, local sim, and I'm just going to scale in the center here. Just like that. Scaling that in. And then one way that I can get this to scale uniformly with ZModeler is to delete my extra piece that I had over there. I don't really need it anyway, so I'm totally fine with doing it this way. This curve is a little ununiform. Let's try to straighten that out a bit. So the way I'm gonna do this is I deleted the geometry on the other side, so now if I want to scale an edge loop, it should scale a little bit more uniformly. And the crease here is not exactly what we're looking for, so I think we're going to end up beveling that edge. You can see here a little bit of ununiformity again in this edge loop. I want this shape to be a little bit more clean, so just kind of tweaking it with my move brush. And you can see that crease in there that I was talking about. When I turn off polyframe, it's a little bit easier to see, so we can try to bevel that here. Out of curiosity, how do you decide whether to use transpose tool to move things versus using the move brush? It just depends on what I need it for. So like I want to move that single vertice right there. I have my move brush selected, just scale my brush down really small, boom, and I can move that. If I want to move specifically this poly loop, it's just easier for me to mask it all off, grab my transpose tool and move it that way, or possibly scale it this way. Just a matter of figuring it out, problem solving, right? That's what I always say that all of this is it's all just problem solving. You have a set of tools and then just using those tools a lot until you figure out the best way to use them for you. So let's bevel that edge. And I want to trying to get a little bit of this lip here in the back like I did. This shape is just getting dirtier and dirtier. I think there's just too much going on, too many edge loops. You can see how that's not very straight. It ends up getting dirty and dirtier. More dirty. So yeah, right now I'm just kind of looking at this from multiple angles. What ends up happening is the more geometry you add to something, the harder it gets to control the shape. Which, I mean, a lot of the time you just simply need more geometry. So it's not like typically a solution, hey, just delete a lot of the geometry. It can be a solution, but a lot of the time you don't have that option. So what I recommend is to start, if you're creating a simple shape like I am here, I kind of, we're experimenting with a lot of different edge loops and stuff to try to get this particular, ring of bevel around the ear. But if it starts getting out of hand, just taking the time to go back through, clean it up. If it's getting a little too dirty, I did try, you saw me delete that edge loop, but then we completely lost the shape of the bevel. So just kind of be aware of that. So we do want to keep that shape. Like I said, I want to get this kind of tucking in, this concavity in there on this inner ear portion as well. So to do that, I think we can possibly extrude this in a little bit. We'll see how it does. So extrude, single poly, those are masked off, so it'll select them all, and then just extruding them in, and it should give us that inner kind of beveled shape that I was just talking about. And then I can use move infinite radius, so this is kind of like sliding an edge loop. I can slide that out. A little bit better. if I can, if it'll let me. There we go. I wanted to delete that edge loop. And then scale here. So really just trying to get that bevel shape nice and clean. So scale edge loop. I'm holding shift while I do that. And let's delete this edge loop. Those edge loops are a little too close, so it ends up creasing them a little too tightly. Remember that a crease is essentially just a few poly loops or edge loops that are very, very close to each other. At least that's what a crease represents when you subdivide the geometry. So that's what we had there. We had a few pieces of geometry. I can show you that again. So just bevel. You can bevel this edge, bevel that edge. And you can see here that we get a bit of a creased edge. Now that's a little bit more smooth than if I were to just directly crease that, get a very sharp edge. But depending on how close you put those poly loops to each other, you can get some pretty tight geometry there. All right. So what are we looking at here? I'm also thinking about 3D printing this while I work here. So the inner portion here, just the thickness, kind of the cross section here, what that's going to look like. Might get a little too tight in some of these areas. I can try to maybe thicken that up. This the beveled shape that we're getting here isn't exactly what I'm looking for. It's not rounded enough. So there's a few things that we can do here. Can kind of play around with it and maybe try beveling some of the edges, but I think what I might like to do, and we can try, let me just try something real quick, see if we can get rid of this. Alright. Now it might seem a little backwards to kind of delete all that, but hold on just a second. So just trying to simplify that shape. I also want to crease this edge. I want to get this as tight as I can. Alright. So from there, I'm going to duplicate it, subdivide it up to about there. That should be fine. Delete my lower subdivision levels, select only this front face, delete hidden, curve tube snap, and draw out my curve, hold shift, and put that curve on there. And we'll thicken that up. Let's do about there. Select that, delete that, boom, boom, boom. So we ended up deleting the actual beveled work that we had. I think that's fine though, just because I prefer the shape that we're gonna get here. And now I can kind of go through, we could try doing a Z remesh, really low poly on this to try to get a little bit more of a cleaner shape. But we're gonna end up getting a lot more vertical edge loops in there. It's going to be quicker, I think, to do this and then just delete the edge loops. So delete edge loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so how many sides do we have now? So now we have, I think we want to delete one more edge loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. We might want to delete 2 more. So move infinite radius. I just want to kind of get these a little bit more uniformly distributed. And let's see, how do we look? Perfect. All right, 6 sides is pretty pretty standard for just taking what would be the low poly version of a cylinder, and then once you round that out, getting a pretty uniform distribution of shape without actually having a billion polygons in there. So I think that looks pretty good. And we're getting a nice cylinder shape in there, and it'll be a lot easier for us to work with this, as well as, you know, go in here, and if we say, it's still a little too dense, you can just come on through and delete every other edge loop, at least the unimportant ones on the straight edge pieces, and get rid of those. These right here I don't want to mess with, simply because we'll be, if we modify that, let me show you. So if I were to delete one of these edge loops, it's going to try to interpolate between those two sections and end up changing that shape a little bit too much for our liking, so it won't follow the edge flow of the original piece quite as well. So I can merge those together now. And now this geometry is not actually, you know, physically welded together. These are still separate pieces, but I could do a Boolean operation later on and be totally happy with that. So I think I'm a lot more happy with that look overall. This looks like it might, these inner corner pieces might cause some issues once we subdivide up. So you can see here that the surface isn't exactly smooth in there. So we can try to fix that. I'm just going to mask it off and use my move brush to kind of adjust some of these verts, or even just push them in a tiny bit. If you look at the surface, it's kind of bubbling out there. We don't want that. So just very lightly stroke with my smooth brush. And just to make sure that this isn't looking too thin, just kind of thicken it up a little bit. It doesn't look quite as round from the side. Try to straighten that out as well. And I'm gonna call that done so that we can move forward onto something else. Cool. So that's pretty much how I did the bevel on this geometry here, using that curved tube snap brush. It's got a lot of different uses. I use it to make hair, to block out hair, make armor, make clothes, make straps, make bevels. It's got a lot of different uses. What is going on here? Our geometry is, that's a little frustrating, but that's going to be hidden anyway, and I'm just going to subdivide and dynamesh it later. We won't worry about it. We won't worry about the crap geometry that you can't see. Katie, hello, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Glad you could make it. So some other things that I was talking about. Turn on perspective here so we can look at this guy. So his legs, working with the pants, the hammer. I was looking at the demon head on the hammer, and I was thinking that might be a little out of character. What do you guys think? I think it's cool, but for something that's heavily stylized and anthropomorphic bear character, maybe the demon head on the hammer is a little too much, a little bit too gritty for something that we have there. Let me turn it off and we can look at it without it, and then you guys can let me know what you think while I do that. So here's the hammer without that. We could do something else on the side to clean that shape up and give it a little bit more visual interest, and by clean it up I mean hide this transition a little bit better, which is kind of what that head served to do. It served to mask that. I can turn that all back on real quick as well. So with it, and if I actually make that its own group, go. I can just turn that on and off now in a flash. So what do you guys think? With or without the demon head? I was thinking maybe we could do like a bear head, but that might be like a little bit on the nose. Yeah, and he is a samurai that uses a giant hammer. He's a bear. He doesn't want to use a samurai sword. No katanas for this boy. I'm very cold at the moment. I am freezing. My house is very cold. Taking a break from character. Didn't samurai have ornate masks with faces? Yes, absolutely. They do. I keep popping up some references to show you guys. I'll bring it back over. So yes, some masks, some really cool stuff. But here, I'll make this over here. I want the face to be visible. I was playing around with some masks last night, and I couldn't find anything that I liked, simply for the fact that, you know, I want it to be obvious that it's, I mean, obviously with the snout, right, it would be pretty obvious that it's not a human character, but I also want it to be very visible and apparent that this is a bear, and I don't really want to cover up the face, I don't think. At least for now, that's kind of my decision on that. But boop, 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 boop. So yeah, I like this. Like I said, I like the demon face. I like the demon head. But I don't know if it fits the character. You know. Depends on how dark you want the piece to seem. No, he's. I don't know if that's dark. I think it's like a cool, old style Japanese kind of design, and we want to get that culture in there for this character. He's got the samurai armor, and we can harken to a lot of that. So let's hold off on the hammer, and we can look at some pants, some pantaloons. So we can hide these pieces that drape around the legs, and we can mess with this. So for the pants, what I want to do, I'm just gonna duplicate that piece so we have an extra one to work on. We want to get this connection point here to have we want it to billow out and then have an opening for the leg to kind of slip through. That needs to make sense. Right now it's just kind of, I just threw it in there really quick and kind of blended it into the leg, which looks a little silly. It doesn't really make much sense visually. It will be covered up somewhat by those armor slats that are hanging down, those bamboo slats, but at the same time we still, you know, want it to make sense underneath. So let's mess with that, and then we can come back to the hammer later on. You're making him without a katana, so there's already the departure there. I mean, it's just the departure of a different weapon, right? I like the little moon on the helmet. Well, thank you, Ariel. I like the little moon, too. It's a little moon bear. Alright, so let's see here. Make these pants more pantsy. Scale up. Use local sim so that when we scale this, it'll scale uniformly. Can already see that we're starting to get that billow out effect. We can also think about maybe doing some shin armor. He doesn't really have much in terms of shins, though. It kind of transitions down as fast as possible, and that's intentional. I do want the visual interest to be as far away from the feet as possible. So I want it to be enough that they don't look visual interesting, but I don't want them to look silly at the same time. And then for these, bring these in. Just being careful with the smooth brush there. And sticking with our Z modeler theme that we got going on. Whoa, Q-mesh, chill out. Q-mesh these in. Now we can have a nice little pant leg that we can crease and have a place for the legs to slip through. And now we can mess with making this look not like garbage. Yuppie, I believe I'm saying that correctly, says thanks for your work. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for coming and hanging out while we play some ZBrush. We're going for the high score today, guys. I don't know what my current high score is, but you know, we're always aiming to beat that high score when we play ZBrush. So what do we want to do with these pants? I think I want to get some interesting hard surface creases. I'm kind of trying to picture it in my head a little bit. So let's do this. Subdivide a few times, delete lower, Dynamesh. I don't want none of that junk geometry to work with. I don't want none of that clean stuff, just let me do it. We'll hand sculpt it. A little bit laggy, so let me turn some stuff off. Turn off the hands, because it's going to make it easier for us to see. We can turn off the hammer, because we're not even using that. Turn off that part as well. Let's turn off some of this junk that's making it a little tough to rotate. And we're dealing with like 22 million polys, so it's not enough to like really lag the scene or anything, but it's enough to like annoy me. So we'll just turn off a few things. That's fun. I think we'll keep that. Yeah, that's good. I like that. It's not nearly as bad now. All right. Cool, cool, cool. So just some hand sculpting here as we play with some of the shapes and forms. I'm just using the clay tubes brush. It's a pretty fun brush to work with. Another good one that I like to use is I don't use it as much as the clay tubes. Clay buildup though. It's a little bit harder to work with, I would say. Simply because of the fact with clay tubes, if you make a stroke, and if I try to continue to build that up, it won't let me build up past a certain point, and that's based on your Z intensity. So if I want to build up higher, I need to let go and continue to make a stroke. But with the clay buildup brush, it will let you build that shape up forever. So it's just a matter of what you prefer. I like using both. Depends on what I'm doing. So just kind of play around with both of them if you've never used them. Try to figure out what you like. Ooh, backface masking is very important here. We're getting some pull through on these pieces. Definitely don't want that. That's a pretty bad one. It's annoying. Which is why I have my own brushes, so that stuff like that doesn't happen. So looking at these, backface masking still on. I think I want to kind of bevel this edge around here. Now, when I say bevel, you know, I can't just go in there with my Z modeler brush and bevel that out, but I can just, you know, do a quick trim on it and kind of clean that up so it's not quite as hard. And it may look really messy what I'm doing right now. Don't worry about it. That's not, the point isn't to keep it very clean right now. The point is to work in a freehand mode, and then we can re-topo it later and remesh it back down. So being able to work a little bit more free-handedly here, and then at any point, you know, oh, I need less polys, so we can just drop down really low with Z remesh. But just being able to work freely and not worry about geometry, but just worry about the forms and shapes that I'm creating is very, very helpful. So, although the geometry is crap, you can see some of the verts here that we're getting are garbage. Ooh, but that's because Keep Groups is on. We don't want that on. So we'll keep messing with this as a high poly sculpt. Playing around with trimming up some of these shapes. Maybe throwing in a basic area where his knee would be, where it would cover out around that. Trim up these areas. And get a more clean transition. So I'm just kind of playing around with the shape. I don't know. I have an idea of what I'm looking for, but we'll see. We'll see when we get closer to there. And you can see that those weird little pieces sticking out when I try to trim here. That's just because the geometry is already sticking out there. It had some weird stuff going on there, or even some holes in the geometry. I can just Dynamesh and clean that up really quick. So not too hard to get rid of. I tend to just ignore it sometimes and clean it up later. Like I said, the point of this is to just kind of work free-handedly, work clean, later, work fast now. So thinking about how I want this to work, and I can turn those bottom panels back on if I want to see if anything is clipping, which it is, and I thought it would be. We can maybe bring that in a little bit, play with that, or even, you know, take these pieces and rotate them out. Turn those back off as we work. Alright, so looking at this, what I would like to do is duplicate this piece. These are the legs here at the bottom. And I'm putting that on subtraction mode. So essentially what I'm saying is, duplicate that. Essentially what I'm saying is, hey, remove this piece from this piece when I Dynamesh them. So a quick little boolean just to make sure that we're not clipping anywhere down there. And then I can move some stuff out. Maybe pinch some of this and clean it up to get it a little bit tighter in there. I think we want to go back to our quick save settings. Adjust that just a little bit so we don't get quite so annoyed. And I think what we want to do is correct this, bring it in so it's not clipping so much. It's going to be easier to just kind of grab your move brush and do that. And then I want to exaggerate this edge as I pull it up and have that transition from a higher portion to a lower portion to kind of represent the knee there. And then I think I want to get some like more creases up in around here so that we can have some interesting shapes going on. So let's do that. Let's just Z-remesh it really low now that we have an idea of what direction we want to take it. And we can go from there. Alright. So the geometry isn't super clean. Now it's a little bit more clean. I'm happy with that, that's fine. So what I was talking about was this edge here. I can recrease that. We do have an edge loop there, but it's not very clean. That's not a problem. So I'm just going to delete some extra geometry. Sometimes your edge loops are edge spirals, and that essentially means that the geometry has a start and an end point for an edge loop, but for an edge spiral it has a start and an end point that's like way farther down your mesh, which can be a little frustrating to work with. But just be aware that those do exist, and there are ways you can use Z-Remesher to specifically help you get rid of those. There's a brush that you can kind of lay some guidelines for Z-Remesher, but if you're looking to get that really clean topo, there's no substitution for just manually doing it. But for what I'm looking for, you know, I can typically get rid of any edge spirals that I don't want with just the tools in ZBrush. So there is, like I said, a guideline brush for that off the top of my head. I don't know what it's called. If somebody in the chat knows what it's called off the top of your head, throw it down there. It's one of the curve brushes. I doubt it starts with curve. It might. Let's see here. Yeah, like I said, off the top of my head, I don't know what it's called. Actually, I think it's called like Z-Remesher Guides or something. So Z-Remesher Guides, there it was. Yep. Well, real quick, we'll pull that back up because I accidentally clicked it away. Z-Remesher Guides. So you can use that to kind of draw some curves, and Z-Remesher will follow those curves on your mesh's surface a little bit better. Very helpful tool, but like I said, the way Z-Remesher works now is it's a lot better at getting rid of those spirals itself. It kind of knows that, hey, we don't like those. We like our clean edge loops. And we got a lot of dense vertical poly loops here, so those are going to cause some inconsistencies in our surface. I can't really delete many of those simply because we'll see what happens here, but as you see here, the edge loop does go up. We have some nice edge loops around the legs here, but as this goes up, you can see how it wraps around. So some of these, if I delete them, we're going to get some garbage like that, and that's definitely not what we want. So we might be able to delete like a couple of them, but because they're more even, I'm just going to keep them so we have a little bit more even topology flow here going on. A little bit just easier to work with, and then when I subdivide it, it's going to be a little bit more clean. And let's see here. Try to mask out that bottom edge. Pull that down. Pull that down and back. Scale it up with local sim on so it scales uniformly, as long as we have scale actually turned on. So I kind of want that to taper in a little bit, but more so I want this edge to taper out. I guess taper wouldn't be the correct word, would it? So we can get the idea of a knee being there, just a little bit. And then play with this. I'm probably going to have to bevel this edge if you look how tight this geometry is. If you're just creating this for something that's always digital, doesn't really matter. You could probably even delete the polys that are in here because you don't need them, they're not visible. But if we're going to 3D print this, which I would like to, this edge is extremely thin, and we would never ever be able to 3D print something like that. It's just way too thin. I have double turned on so I can show you. So it does taper into that thinness, which can be a little bit, it might print, but just because of how thin it gets in there overall, I would like to bevel that edge. So beveling it, it's going to give it some thickness. And then I can crease both of those edges, hopefully. So crease both those edges, and then just use my move brush with backface masking and thicken those up. And actually what I'm gonna do here is pull them all the way in, because when this prints, it's just gonna be a lot easier to work with to have that up there, I think. And then for this edge here, we're gonna try to mask this out. So I'm using my mask lasso to mask all those polys on the bottom, and then do a second pass where I clear out those middle ones. Flip my mask, and now I can make this a little bit more uniform and clean up the shape. And again, this is, you gotta think, this is at the bottom of the character, the least interest. I love this, by the way. It's at the bottom of the character, the least interesting part. It's covered up by a lot of stuff, as well as, you know, it's at the bottom port. Like the angle that you would have to look at this from to see is near impossible. So you gotta kind of consider a lot of that stuff as well. So I'm not worried about closing off this hole. Especially for 3D printing, this is going to help a lot. I'm going to have to do a lot of stuff like what I just did here to make something that's going to be 3D printable. But making something ready for 3D print is the last step. Absolutely. You want to think about that stuff along the way, though, for sure. And make sure that that is masked off on that bottom loop. We have, honestly, just too much geometry in here. It's a little difficult to work with. So I might, we might try to delete some edge loops. I would like to, but it's not even letting me delete that one. We can try to delete a couple. But again, if we're not careful, we get something like that. So, yep, so that's about what we can do. But it does clean it up a little bit, enough that we can continue playing with this. So I'm just trying to get these really clean shapes in here right now. And let's exaggerate this this transition a little bit more, and then we can work with the rest of the pants, clean them up. So pull that up, let's pull it in a tiny bit. I think I want to maybe pull the legs in general, just so they're not nearly as close to these side pieces, to avoid that. So one thing I'm gonna do here, I think I showed this off yesterday in yesterday's stream. If you create or do any operation in ZBrush, you can do a hotkey called replay last. There's also a button for it in your menu. I don't know where it is off the top of my head. Just look up ZBrush replay last. Anything that you do in ZBrush, you can replicate that onto something else. So if I scoot this in like so, I can simply click the hotkey for replay last, and it'll move it the exact same amount. I believe that that is the number one hotkey on your keyboard for you guys. For me, it's a different hotkey though, because I use my number keys 1 through 9 for all my brushes down here. So you see all those highlighting. That's me just pressing my number keys. So that's what I use for those. But yeah, I keep it like an old school shooter. I have all my weapons on my number pad, essentially. Shin guards are for noobs. Yo, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us. Let me see here real quick. Sorry. Alright, I love the face still, love what we got going on. It's beautiful. I think that's just going to be our new face. Just keep it like that for the rest of the time. The butt, since we deleted some edge loops, I'm going to have to pull that back out. as well as on the sides here. I kind of ended up moving that quite a bit. We do have some collisional issues with some of this, like on the back, that back piece there. So what we can do to avoid that is push that in. Let me hide this again. And we end up getting this gap in here. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Instead, just take my move brush and kind of help thicken that piece out. And do the same here. Thicken those. And we can look at that more later after posing and everything else to make sure that we're not getting anything weird, any weird gaps or weird collisions. All right, cool. So looking at these pants a little bit more now, I was saying it would be cool to get some more creases in here. Again, a lot of this is covered up though, so let me find. Did I turn off? Okay, no, the rotation of that piece is just a little odd. So these aren't going to be seen super well because they will be covered. But I do want to look at this with everything that's going to be in the way. So maybe like a crease here, just to add some visual interest. So let's play around with that. So I'm just going to subdivide these a bunch of times. We're at almost 2 million. And we're going to do just something like this. So I'm using a personal brush. The damn standard brush will work and do almost the exact same thing here. You can see that my brush is a little bit different though, just in the type of geometry that it creates. It's a little bit softer. I have a little bit more control here. So just kind of playing with this. And then we'll just do another one in the back and kind of bring these to a connection point there. And they are symmetrical currently, which is fine, but it looks extremely unorganic for anything like a fold. A fold is an organic shape, so we would want to add some variation to that for sure, which we will. So start off with that, and then I'm going to swap on over to my pinch brush. And try to play with this. I'm going to mask this area off down here at the bottom. Try to use a bit larger of a pinch brush so that I can pull that shape in. Really start to get that kind of creased transition. And we'll play with that a little bit more, try to clean it up. Same with the front. And our that's not working out too well. Ooh, accidental Dynamesh. I was a little confused there. Let me try that again. Trying to get this mask to not be pulling that edge up. Shouldn't matter too much though, because I still have that low poly piece that I can bring it back with. Alright, so just lightly stroking on here. Again, trying to bring that up. Get that creased shape. Let's go ahead and, I think, Dynamesh this and keep playing with it. Resolution of 2000 puts us at roughly 1,000,000 polys. That's fine. Should be a good level to work with. What I would like to do next is just create a couple poly groups here. And that's not a very clean edge there, not at all, but it somewhat follows the edge here that we have, and that's going to be good enough for once we Z-remesh this, and we're going to Z-remesh it with groups turned on, and you guys will see the clean geo that we'll get from that. Another way that you can kind of create these types of creasing and folds on here is to just create a tube piece of geometry that you lay on the surface and then work with it that way, which we might end up playing with. We'll see. We shall see. But yeah, it's just going to be a lot of kind of freehand working with this and trying to clean it up, clean up these transitions, make them blend a little bit better. Might have a little bit too much geo to work with. Yeah, it's so I think one person in the last stream had asked me about how do you know, like, do you always work in Dynamesh or do you always work with clean topology? As you can see, it's a process of flowing back and forth between the two. So I wanted to get this really hard clean crease at the bottom. So I did that with some Z-remeshed cleaned up topology. But now we're back in Dynamesh on the same piece, and we're playing with it that way. And we're gonna jump back and forth and try to do some more work with it. So it's all a little bit of a per case basis, trying to figure out what works best for what you need, and just going with the flow. So I'm just trying to create some somewhat clean selections here, and that's not great, but that should be good. So I'm essentially polygrouping this piece. We'll try to get a different color. So now we have that, and let's do this. So pull on up through here. I'm just trying to create somewhat clean selections and polygroup this. Might seem a little bit weird, these polygroups. A lot of people, so not a lot of people, but if you're looking at face topology, I'm sure some of you are familiar with the topology of a character's face and the poly loops and edge loops that you have to have in there, around the lips, around the, following around the mouth, around the nasolabial folds, around the eyes, around the entire head, and then you typically end up with some stars around the cheekbones, or maybe the corner of the nose, or occasionally down by your chin. So it depends on the topology that you go for, but you can use polygroups to create that topology for a face, and it works pretty well with Z-remesher. So if I Z-remesh this and tell it to keep polygroups on, essentially what Z-remesher is going to do, we'll see how good it works, but essentially what it's going to try to do is follow the edges that I created with these polygroups and try to create these separations between those. And hopefully we get a somewhat decent result, which we didn't. And that happens, but one way that we can kind of try to force it to do exactly what we want is to just split it up. So split hidden, actually, we'll Dynamesh this first, so we have that piece. We will Dynamesh this next so that we can close the hole and that we can get this cap. We're going to want that split hidden, and then Dynamesh because we want the cap, and we pulled a little bit of that geo there. Get rid of that. Let this quick save. It's all about kind of just understanding the tool sets that you have. A lot of people, there's a lot in ZBrush. There's no way really around it. But the more you understand about this software, the more you're gonna be able to kind of accomplish. I want to get rid of this garbo. I'm just using H polish to pull that in as tight as I can. Dynamesh might freak out here. That's okay. Just trying to do this as quickly as possible. We're getting some holes in the geometry. That's because it's too thin. So I'm going to kind of cheat it a little bit. Not that much though. Cheat it from the other side. I'm using a move brush with backface masking there. So nothing crazy. Your inflate brush can be good as well for closing these types of holes. So I could have done maybe like a slice and tried to get it really clean. Just the shape of this isn't perfect, so I would prefer to just kind of chunk it up really quick. All right, I think that'll do it. All right, so we got these pieces here as well. We're gonna close, put some caps on these. Make sure Dynamesh is on. And this one as well. And let's go on down to ZRemesh. Keep groups is on, ZRemesh here. We'll do at 1000 for this top piece. We'll see what it looks like. Probably be a little bit too thick in topology. But because keep groups is on, this is one poly group, and the caps on the end pieces are a single poly group. So as long as we don't have a lot of garbage going on here, I can try to clean up what's going on here. I might have a hole there. There could be a few things that cause that. It might just be that the polygon count is a little too high, but essentially, because keep groups is on, it's going to separate those two poly groups pretty well. In that case, it created a hole, but hopefully now that I clean that up, we still got some holes going on here. So what I'm going to do is close holes, take this piece, polygroup it, take that, polygroup everything, try it again. There we go. Cleaned it up quite a bit. And let's see, what's our next piece? Let me turn these back off so that I can just kind of alt-click on these, select them. So we can get some nice creases here as well. This one is going to be a little tough. I have a feeling it's not even going to work at all, just because it gets so thin there. Oh, and look at the holes. I'm just going to cancel that. So let me smooth this out, Dynamesh it, smooth it out. Try to adjust this. ZBrush gets really wonky when you start having very thin geometry. And all this just to create a clean pair of pants, right? But it all starts out dirty. A lot of the time. Dad ass though. Yes, that bare ass. Oh, let's see. Let's see, how did we do? I'm gonna try to kind of force it to do what I want. Try to... We'll try that. So I'm just trying to shift some of the poly groups. It's struggling though. Actually, I think this will be fine. If I do it really low. I actually do think that's okay. Let's stick with that for now. For this piece, I'm just gonna run a smooth along here really quick, and that's going to make it quite a bit easier. to not have any holes when this finishes Z-remeshing. We might still have a few. Okay. And we'll clean that up too. Keep groups. Last piece, Z-remesh. See what that does. Got some extra geometry up here. I'm just going to press Control W on that. It essentially polygroups everything that you see because nothing is masked, and then remeshes it all as a single group. And these edges are very close together. I can kind of see them bleeding through one another, and that's because I have double turned on. It's going to be very helpful. I'm just going to try to avoid that. And then because I have backface masking on a few of these brushes, I can build up one face without tearing up the other. And there we go. Cool, cool, cool. We're getting there. We're getting there. So with this piece, it's going to be a little bit harder to crease edges, do anything like that. Maybe not though. Oh, yes it is. So remember I was talking about spirals? You can see that apparent here. If you follow this edge loop here, spirals in and in and in. That's what you want to avoid. So let's try to work with this. Let's start here. Give us a low poly, please. And we are going to create a crease. Edge loop complete. And we're all gonna start modifying here. Just gently. So remember, I'm trying to get that crease in the pants. So I'm gonna have to use all these parts and pieces. This one, I'm not going to be able to crease quite as well, just because the topology flow is pretty garbage. But I think we can still get some cool shapes out of this. So I'm thickening that up. Move backface mask. And we'll do the same thing here, but give us a low poly piece. And crease and crease. And I think you guys can start to see how you can work with this shape to get something out of multiple pieces. I like to work with multiple parts and pieces for a lot of different stuff. If you're having trouble creating a specific shape, I always say, you know, split it up into multiple parts. And normally when I say that I'm working on like an organic character, this is still an organic shape. Clothing and folds are definitely tough, but I think doing something like this can make it a little bit easier if you're trying to get those clean shapes. So we'll crease this edge loop. Whoops, crease that edge loop. Whoops. And I'm going to delete some edge loops as well. So I'm just keeping that dynamic smooth on as I do all this. All right. Now we can, if we wanted to add some asymmetry, we could do that now. I'm not sure. I think I would prefer to do that before I start combining anything. So let's maybe mess with that. Hey, sorry for the late join. Had to make dinner and clean up. No worry, no worry. Bye from France. Later. Thanks for coming in. Gotta run for a little bit. Be back soon. No worries. Thanks for coming and hanging out, playing ZBrush. Let's see here. So, asymmetry. Work on up through these and just turn off symmetry on each of those pieces. And then I think it's going to be as simple as adding some tilt to a bunch of these pieces. So grabbing our transpose and creating some rotations. Trying to get some different angles going on here. And again, keep in mind, a lot of it is covered up, so it's not the end of the world if it's not completely different on each side. I think just having enough difference to kind of create that organic feel to where, hey, this is, it doesn't look quite so mechanical. Can play with this, maybe making one shorter than the other, making one thicker than the other. There's a lot we have that we can work with. Even completely, you know, changing the way one crease works on the opposite side, which is what I'm trying to do right now. So one is maybe more apparent from the back, whereas the other is a little bit more apparent from the front. And this edge is being quite annoying. Let's see if we can delete this without creating issues. I want to do that on the other side too. All right. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It's the one thing that's, you know, it's tough about 3D. It takes a long ass time to make something that looks good. And sometimes you take all that time and it still doesn't look good. So just be patient. Try to work with this. I'm going to turn this off. And just get rid of that completely, I think. I want to go for the cleanest shapes that I can here. And I think that was just kind of bothering me. So I could try to like line up some verts or snap them together and weld them and delete some junk. If I was in more akin to like Maya or some software like that, I might try that. But we got other methods in ZBrush of combining stuff. Some new methods like live boolean and all sorts of cool stuff. So we'll figure it out when we get there. But it's probably best to keep these separated as long as I can, since they're nice and clean already, and then I can kind of modify them as I go. And honestly, I might even keep these separated until I Dynamesh them. So let's do this. I have an idea. Let's ZModeler, grab all of these faces, boop, 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 and those two, and perform Sometimes ZModeler can select faces on the opposite side, just like that, it'll bleed through. It gets a little annoying. You can turn on back face masking to avoid that though. And extrude up. And scale in. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. We're working with asymmetry, so keep that in mind. Best to just do it separate for now. They might be close enough to where I could do one operation, but might as well just do it separate. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this piece. So ZModeler. And like I said, that the symmetry local sim option doesn't work super great with ZModeler anyway for scaling stuff. So it's probably best to just avoid it in general. Scale that in. The way I'm doing that, by the way, is I'm just masking off the polys that I want to move and scale. And then I'm just clicking that inner white circle of my transpose line, and that centers my transpose on those masked off polys. So very, very powerful tool. And over here as well. And try to scale that in. Ooh, might have missed some. All right, let's see what we're working with. Now we can kind of try to play around with these pieces. Line some stuff up. And hey, I think we're making some good progress. Now what I'm going to do is just merge all of these pieces together. I'm deleting that junky piece that I had. And from here, I have some nice clean geo going on with some maybe interesting creases that I can modify all together. So I can auto groups here, so each piece has its own complete poly group, and then I can maybe mask off an edge, pull out a piece if I want to kind of exaggerate that crease there, and do that with all this. So just using this piece here, kind of pull that out, help line some of this stuff up. And now I could merge all this together. I could keep it separate. I could keep playing with it, but I think that's a good kind of block out portion for what we have now. And let me turn that armor back on. All those pieces, collisions, let's see, not too bad, just on the rope on the back end of these pieces, which is fine. I don't think that'll matter too much. I cannot, I need to turn this back on. It's killing me. Yeah, so we can play with the pants a little bit more down the road, but I think we have kind of a good place there. Let's, looks like my stream might have paused for a second, so if anybody's experiencing any lag, I apologize. Let me refresh this page real quick. Strange. All right, cool. Looks like we're good. So let me turn just everything on real quick. and we can see where we want to go. All right, and we have some garbage down here, some extra pants. All right, cool. I have to sneeze. Oh man. Normally, last time I said I have to sneeze, it didn't happen, and I didn't feel like it was gonna happen, but then it happened. So, like I said, I want the legs, I want the visual interest to be a lot more boring at the bottom. So I essentially just kind of created these pieces that could represent the feet in a very simplistic way, without drawing too much attention to them. I'm not sure if I don't really like what's going on down here, and I'm not sure what I want to do to fix that. I haven't really given it too much thought. I essentially want to simplify what would be his feet into something, essentially why they just come down as cylinders. So that's all his legs are, leg plus feet, plus some what you might, maybe toenails, I don't even know, essentially, which is a bad sign, right? Like I said, I'm just kind of playing down here and trying to really create something that's simple enough to be kind of said, okay, feet, and then you move on with your life. Whereas the top is more interesting, and no one's really commented on them, so I guess that's kind of what I wanted. That's kind of a good sign. But at the same time, I don't know. What do you guys think? We could maybe, I was thinking just doing like a single block of geometry to kind of simplify like a foot shape. There's another example that I have. I don't have it pulled up. I don't know where it went. But yeah, we can look at the hammer. We can look at the hammer next if we don't know what we want to do with those. Had some time while we're working on the pants to think about the hammer. I do like the design. This is going to be really hard to 3D print with the teeth and everything. So we might be able to just do some kind of organic shape, or I'm sorry, less organic shape on here. Maybe something with the moon. We can kind of try to pull a moon or bear motif up into this as well. So let's turn this off, at least for the time being, and try to do something new. Let me grab this, and we'll duplicate that piece and then work off of that. This is a piece that I imported through new thing, text 3D and vector shapes. So I imported some vector files that I created in Illustrator of some kanji, one being Kuma, one being Midori, so bear and green, and then I did a Boolean subtraction on these pieces, which ended up working out really well. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. So next is creating something on here that could kind of maybe pull that moon, like I said, that moon motif up into here. Or maybe just like look up some references of some Japanese kind of filigree work or something like that. Ariel said maybe give it a fish decoration. That's not a bad idea. I kind of like that. Huh. Maybe we can find some Japanese fish hammers online. Let's see. Japanese fish fish sculpture. So like koi, maybe. Maybe we could find something, or maybe like the whole dragonfish thing. I've seen this a few times. This is kind of cool. I'm not sure exactly how that would fit onto the hammer. Could try to figure it out though. Let me grab this piece, duplicate, push it all the way to the bottom, and move it up. We can play with that maybe. Might be able to find something to do. Turn that off. And it might be best to just do something simple as well. So maybe something koi related, some koi fish. Like I said, I do think the demon head, it looks cool. I just don't know if it fits the design. So video game hammer. Maybe we can find something in here. So yeah, I was thinking like this is from World of Warcraft. That's a Thrall's hammer, I think. So maybe some kind of design on the side, something a little more unorganic. So let's say Japanese video game hammer. That's gonna return absolutely nothing but some kendamas. So video game. This is kind of cool. I kind of like that. It's really neat. Concept hammer. So we can find some cool stuff in here. Ooh, fancy. That looks pretty bad. Oh, well, that's sweet. So we can find some inspiration in here. Or turn the moon into a leaping salmon. That might be a lot of work or something. Turn the moon into a leaping salmon. So essentially, what I could do is I could sculpt a salmon, and then use this bend curve feature to kind of make it fit that. Kind of like an Echo the dolphin kind of dolphin leaping out of, like, have you ever seen those images? Dolphin semicircle, but like with a I'm not gonna, like one of these one of these, but essentially a salmon instead. We could do something like that. That's a cool idea. I do like that. We could put that on the helmet and on the hammer. Yeah. Some cool ideas. I like this. I like this. Just a lot of stuff to kind of look at. So I was thinking maybe we could do something filigree-esque. Not sure. So if I did a fish, I'm not sure how I would get the... Let me just like scale this up to what I think it would be, so that I can get an idea here. It's a Sailor Moon hammer. Turn off perspective. If I do something, yeah, try to pull in a similar motif from there. Maybe even something with the armor on here might be interesting. My like temple is twitching and I can't make it stop. Yeah, I think we have a lot of options of stuff that we could do. So thinking about that, the question is, focus. So we want the head to be the point of focus of the character that draws your attention in and kind of keeps it there. And we want from top to bottom, most interesting to least interesting, as well as having some period of rest to kind of help focus the eye, which is what this kind of serves as here. So an interesting up here draws your attention, the face of the character. Period of rest, it's a little bit less interesting. Same for the arms. So the arms are not covered in any detail or armor. So it goes from the arms into the hammer. So having those periods, those transitional periods, and then leading down the length of the hammer, right? Same thing, most interesting to least interesting. So pulling up into here, how much detail do we want to have? I'm worried that if we do something like the demon head, like I had on there, I essentially have two competing faces. I have the face of the character and then the hammer. So if we make the hammer, I think, just more visually interesting without maybe doing something like a fish or a face, I think that might pull too much attention away from the actual character and be kind of competing with that. So I want to. It's hard when you're thinking about these things, because honestly you don't know until you try it and then you see how it looks. But I think I want to try to avoid that as much as possible, and this is kind of trying to exercise that that ability of kind of trying to tunnel people's focus. So let's try something a little less organic, I think. There's an awesome sculpt of this for a recent game, Nords. I don't know if that game is out. If anybody knows if the game Nords is out, I don't know anything about the game. There was a bunch of 3D art being posted on ArtStation a few months back for it, though. Some cool stuff. Let's say maybe this isn't gonna work because I'm gonna get a lot of like blacksmithing hammers, I think. Maybe we can maybe we can do like some organic filigree of a fish. Like this, like how the dragon is kind of on the hammer. Maybe we can do something like that. I like that. Let's do that. That sounds like a cool idea. And have it be like a separate panel. So, like a relief sculpture is what that would be called. So relief sculpture, koi. Let's try koi. It's kind of cool. That's kind of dumb. This is fun. I kind of like these. Something like this. This looks like it's 3D as well. Bronze finish. I guess not 3D technically, but not digital 3D. These are neat. Yeah, so something like this maybe? This might be cool. What do you guys think? Let's say salmon. Salmon are ugly as sin. So are koi, though. Nice salmon there. That's a nice fish. Not what the the king salmon. That's an ugly ass raccoon. All right, let's stick with the koi. Let's try something like this. This is cool. I'm gonna avoid the lily pads though. Maybe just try to do something like this. And we might incorporate the moon on it as well. But let's turn off a bunch of the bear stuff. So no bear for you. Okay. And I want to do a side panel to sculpt on. And actually, I might just actually sculpt the salmon as a piece and then squash it to create the relief and then use some deformations to do that. That might be really cool. That might be fun. Let's try that. I think that would be pretty cool. It looks like we have some Spanish in the chat, which I don't completely understand. But let's see. Your webinar, American webinar, sir. Nope. There's just enough words that I don't understand. America, pero. Well, if anyone wants to translate, go for it. Go for that Google Translate key. But we're just going to assume that it's very, very nice things. All right. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to throw it off to the side here. And I'm going to grab... Actually, I don't need to do that. That's fine. I'll just copy the image and throw it in Photoshop for me to reference. So now I have that in Photoshop, and I'm going to take a look at that while I work. So we can sculpt a fishy and play around with this. So I think we can create something fun here for the hammer. Some cool detail, some cool kind of relief work on it without at the same time creating too much visual interest. So we don't want that to compete with the character too much in the face. So let's see here. Let's grab this guy. Or actually, you know what? I should just be able to manually do this. So if I just take any piece, it doesn't matter what the geometry is, and cube it up. I should be able to do this just fine. And from there, let's do a poly loop around here. And start creasing some edges. Essentially creasing every edge except for that middle one, which is going to help with our curve. I want this to be a little bit more narrow. So this is the piece that the relief sculpture, I think, will be possibly attached to. Maybe not, though. I don't know. Maybe we just put it directly on the hammer. Whoops. I don't know. We could try to do a few. So it looks like they're swimming around the hammer, which sounds really cool when I say it. But can I actually make that look really cool? That's another thing. It does give me some interesting ideas about like doing ripples in the water. So like drag rectangle alphas. Like, ooh, you can do some water ripples, right? Oh, that's fun. So maybe we could like play around with this. Freehand. Switch that back. I want to have the correct stroke. So yeah, we'll hold on to that. But let's just go ahead and start making our fishy. So, a fish. How do we want to make a fish? Let's look up. Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and look up a koi real quick, just so I have another point of reference of a real animal that I can reference and sculpt. And one sec. Sounds like they want to make sure you publish the stream for viewing later. Well, don't worry about it. All streams go up on my channel afterwards. So if you miss anything, it does go up on the channel later. So no worries. Koi fish are really freaking ugly too, now that I think about it. Some of them are cool and patterned really neat. But like these are really pretty. This one. Some of them are just, oh, he's cool too. Some of them are just ugly. Fish are ugly, guys. If anybody can send me a picture of a cute fish, please do so. These are awesome. So I'm looking for a not so crappy reference image. Is that a goldfish? This honestly, one of these. This is great. I love this. That's not bad. I'll probably just keep this off to the side. All of these, since none of them are super great. That honestly isn't terrible, just so I can understand the basic shape of the body. It's kind of teardrop as it kind of pulls back. Alright. So let's go ahead and start. I'm just going to grab a sphere. As I do. You guys know me and my spheres. Alright. I have a Magikarp sculpture that might not be a terrible starting point for something like this. Maybe we can grab him and work him around to fit our koi. It's not a bad idea. I don't know. I like reusing a lot of work because it saves time. Craig says koi. I'm not sure why. Did I spell koi incorrectly or something? It's very possible that I spelled koi wrong. Let's go ahead and dynamesh this guy. So as this pulls back, right, flattens, tapers in. You guys didn't think you'd come here getting some fish sculpting, did you? I will change the stream title to Fish Sculpting with Folly. We'll switch it up, just so, you know, expectations can be set correctly when they come in. This is a really small scale, so that's why my Dynamesh resolution is so high. Ah, you were voting on koi. Yes, yes. We'll stick away from the slam and salmon, and we'll stick with koi for sure. At least as we go here. So let me look at a couple of references. So it looks like it tapers back in towards the front, little torpedo-ish, and it does stay pretty a little bit more thick here towards the back. And the tail comes to a flat end, a little bit rounded actually, as it transitions into the tail. Oh, all right, so build this up a tiny bit. Just adding some thickness. Not quite as much as I want. And then the sides, I have them a little too flat. So I did that intentionally too sharp. So I'm building up that transition into that shape, and then I'll knock it back down a little bit. Just a quick way to kind of do that though. Pinch it a little bit, just so we can change that shape. And you can see there that as I step back down, it gets a little bit closer to what we're looking for. So I don't even really need to smooth it. I can just delete my higher subdivs and go back down. And I could have manipulated those at a lower subdiv as well. It's just, I mean, it was just quicker for me to do that very fast. So that's a lot closer to what we're looking for in terms of basic proportions. Swap your material around to look at it from a little bit of a different point of view. The basic shape here, this primary form is going to be really important. Maybe let's leave that there for now. Let's get in the other parts. So duplicate, delete lower. I'll subdivide one more time, delete lower. And the shape of the koi's head, it's a little strange. A few different, I don't know if these are even actually different types of fish, but it looks like it kind of pulls back. I'm looking at this image here, so it kind of pulls back through there. It's a little tough to, as I don't have exact, I don't have great references here. This is just a quick Google and we're trying to do this quickly. But I'll probably take more time cleaning this up. Holy crap, that thing is fat. Ah, yes, my favorite koi fish, the anime koi fish. The pants koi. What is wrong? What is happening here? Oh, I guess it's a show. Well, let me grab that image back. Keep working here. So with that mask there, I can extract that. I can polygroup it by pressing Ctrl W. There's a few things here I can do. I'm just going to polygroup it because with an extraction, what'll happen is I will get a thickness here, and I don't want a thickness. I want this to be closed off. I want that to be solid. And just so I can have that. That's way too thick, but I'll fix it here in a sec. I want this to be separate though, and have a closed hole. What am I looking for? Keep groups, ZBrush, really low. As I dynamic smooth that, it'll change it. We want a bit of a pointier nose here. As it tapers down, it gets a little bit more sharp than what I had. Try to keep it rounded, but also clean it up. And then there's some gills on here. I only see just the angle that I'm looking at it from. Looks like it has like a single slit for its gill. Honestly, most of these fish are so colorful, it's really hard to tell. So let's say koi. Here, I'll pull this over. Koi gills. Oh, that's disgusting. That's not what I wanted at all. But from this, it looks like yes, indeed, there is a single slit here for the shape. I think that's the best reference. So a single slitted shape, and then this. It looks like this is kind of a bony ridge here. These fish are, his eyes are bulging out of his face. That's fun. That's fun. And we'll keep that page up as well. Oh man, this is just a joyous time looking at gross fish pics. See, I don't know if anybody in here fishes, but I haven't fished in a while. I used to fish when I was a kid. But fishing is just, one, it's really boring, and two, it's really, really gross. So I'm sorry to the fishers out there for offending your beloved hobby. But fishing's gross. There was a time when I was at my grandparents' place in Florida, fishing off their dock in the back of their apartment complex, or whatever, not apartment, but condo complex, condominium complex, and we were fishing off the back on the dock, and I thought my line had got stuck on the bottom of this canal that we were fishing in, and my grandpa came over and he's like, "Oh no, that's not stuck, you got an eel." And apparently, like, there was a bunch of eels in this canal, and what they would do is they would, eat your bait, get hooked, and then they would wrap themselves around rocks or coral or whatever was on the bottom of this canal, and they would, like, hold on as tight as they could. And it would feel like your line was stuck on the bottom, but you had to pretty much just tug and tug and tug and pull them up so that you could remove the hook, or you'd have to just cut your line. And it's not like I was a little kid and couldn't, like, I wasn't like, "Oh, I'm a derpy little 5-year-old Ben who can't do this." But I was probably like 18 or so, and I had trouble pulling it up. My dad had trouble pulling it up. But I wasn't the only one to catch an eel. I did catch a really gross flounder, I remember. Like I said, fish are just gross, guys. Let's just get rid of fish. All fish. We just gotta eat them all. Any fans of sushi out there? I know I love my sushi. Let's put some eyes on this guy. And checking out some koi eyes. Some look like they're like squinting with lids. Others are more wide open. This doesn't need to be like anatomically perfect because it's supposed to look like a relief sculpture on this hammer. So even having some like stylization to it, I think, would be appropriate. I'm just looking at the position here. Figure out where I want these. And then try to, well, actually, put that back. So I'm going to duplicate this piece again. And it looks like the bony structure here and goes up. We'll give this a little bit more form. Wraps around here all the way to the back to where the gills would be. And then the mouth, man, the mouth of a koi fish is something to have nightmares about. We'll play with it. Well, we'll try to make it a little less nightmare-y. And like I said, this will probably be something that I'll spend some time working on off a stream as well. Now the reason I separated that is I've talked about in the past how getting something to go from a very hard transition to a period of soft transition like we kind of have here, it can be hard. It can be really difficult to do that. But if you split the pieces up, it can make that a little bit easier for you. we can try to do that here. And my computer and lights are like baking me right now. So even though I started off this stream freezing cold, now it's getting quite warm. And I know if I walk outside of my office here, it'll be freezing cold. So that's why I keep the door shut, keep all the heat in, or air in, depending on what time of the year it is. Can get pretty hot and pretty cold in here. Alright, so this shape actually kind of pulls back through around the eye. So I can try to build that up as well a little bit. And it looks like they do have some kind of slit here. I think that's just the front part of the gill. I'm guessing that's like, I don't know if it's a joint or what, because I don't know the anatomy of gills, if they have any bony structure attached there to where it's kind of like a hinge joint. I would assume there would have to be something though, because you can't really just have, you know, a bunch of floating muscles attaching to nothing. So, well, like I said, I haven't really researched it too much, and I'm not looking at a fish skull. But I will eventually. Not right now, though. We won't waste too much time on this. Alright. So I'll play with this, this fish boy a little bit longer, and then I'll probably bounce on out of here. What I do want to do is start just throwing in a few junky pieces to kind of block out where some stuff is going to go for our koi. So we'll leave that as it is for now, even though it doesn't look great. That's fine, don't worry about it. Duplicate a piece, and we can start to block out this tail fin. Turn off local sim. And grab a different image. So square shaped, pulls back into 3 parts. Actually, this is a very particular type of koi fish. It says NorCal National Koi, whereas some of them have very flowing tails. I was looking at this one. A little bit more traditional. There we go, that's pretty good too. What is this then? A butterfly koi fish. So let's stick with the traditional kind of koi, and we can, I think this is a little bit of a better reference. So most fish have this kind of like fin pattern where it's like I don't know the names of particular fins, but you got your main fins up front, these 2 smaller ones that I assume are just for steering, and then you have like your rudder and your tail, so your bottom one down here. So let's block those in real quick, and after we block those in, I'll probably bounce on out of here, and we can think about what we're gonna do for the next stream, what we can work on. Still a lot more to go on this character though, as we've only done armor here recently, and this is still I would consider, you know, armor, but I'll keep these connected here. Just looking for proportional position. I think that I'm gonna have to make my koi, just generally speaking, quite a bit longer. He looks like he's proportionally pretty short. Maybe it's a baby koi. So block out some more fins. And again, they don't have to be perfect for now. We'll look more at them as we go. Some of these smaller fins. And then something for the rudder down here. Uh-oh, that's not good. Want to make sure we get all of that. That was a little strange. So essentially that's like the basic fin pattern that we're looking at. Those actually might be, that actually might be a side one as well. Let me, let's do this. So since this is relief, whew, that would have been annoying. I did not want to delete that. Once you delete something, you cannot undo that. So what I'm going to do instead here is, because this is relief, because it's going to be viewed from, you know what, now that I think about it, I don't know. I was thinking about this being projected onto the hammer from this view, so it'd kind of wrap around it that way. But maybe it's the side view, I don't know. But I think I'm just going to do these two main fins and not worry about that additional one. And again, there's some proportion issues that I think we're struggling with here, but we'll take a look at all of that in the next stream, and I'll be doing more work on this guy when I have some time in between there. So when we come back together next time, we'll have a lot more progress and a lot more progress to make. But I think that's a good point to kind of cut off as we start blocking in some more stuff. And obviously this is straight as can be. We'll mess with all of that in the next stream. So let me just turn everything back on so that we can see what all we've done. We've done a lot of stuff with the pants and the hammer for the fish. We've been thinking about that and thinking about some cool ways where we can block out some of this stuff. And we took a look at the ears as well, which we said we would do, and I still have that extra geometry in there, which I'm going to delete. So we've made some cool progress on this guy over the past few days. Switch back to my material. And like I said, we still got a lot more. Hide that head. And we'll get there. We'll get there slowly but surely. But until then, here, it's YouTube was asking me if I wanted to show this comment. I don't care. It says, "Are you trying to make a dick?" No, we were going with what is eventually going to be a koi fish for a relief sculpture on the hammer up here. So originally, we'll turn some junk off. Originally we have like this demon head, and I think it looks really cool. I just think it's competing too much with the main character that we have down here. So we will work more on that in the next stream and try to figure all that out. I'm not positive if I will be streaming tomorrow, but for sure Friday, if not tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks again for popping in, asking cues as you guys do, hanging out, and being helpful as I try to make some decisions. Lorenzo says magic 3D. Yeah, that's right. It's kind of very magical. But yeah, guys. Again, thanks for coming in, and I'll see you either tomorrow or Friday. Peace out.